Deep within the Himalayas, at an altitude of nearly 16,000 feet, sits a glacial lake completely cut off from the rest of the world. It is surrounded by nothing but steep ice and barren rock. Locals know it by a darker name, Skeleton Lake. Scattered across the ice and submerged in the freezing water are the remains of hundreds of human beings. The bodies were officially documented in 1942 when a British-era forest ranger was navigating a high-altitude patrol and noticed bones jutting out from the snow. As the summer sun slightly melted the ice, a horrifying level of detail emerged. The freezing temperatures had acted as a natural tomb, preserving chunks of human flesh, intact patches of hair, and thick leather shoes. At the height of World War II, authorities suspected a recent mass casualty, perhaps a unit of retreating soldiers or a lost royal army that had wandered off course and died of exposure. But the sheer volume of bodies in a location with no strategic value made those military theories difficult to verify. History had no record of a large deployment here, forcing modern science to step in and work backward from the bones. Researchers extracted bone samples to run through radiocarbon dating, shifting the investigation from historical guesswork toward empirical evidence. The results eliminated any connection to modern warfare. The victims died around 1,200 years ago, placing their end in the 9th century. To figure out who these people were, scientists drilled into the ancient skulls to extract surviving strands of DNA. The initial genetic readouts matched local geographical expectations. A large portion shared DNA profiles consistent with populations living near the mountains. But the data revealed a massive anomaly. A separate group carried genetic markers from the Eastern Mediterranean, like modern-day Greece. With no established roads in the 9th century, they traveled over 3,000 miles to reach this hostile environment. The presence of Mediterranean DNA in a frozen mass grave at 16,000 feet turned a local mystery into an international puzzle. It presented a migration that was not documented in the historical records of the era. With the identities mapped, pathologists examined the bones for specific signs of trauma to determine exactly what killed them. They found a highly consistent pattern across the victims. The skulls and upper shoulder blades featured deep, rounded indentations from blunt force impacts. No blade marks on the ribs, no sword cuts on the forearms, no damage to the lower bodies. This lack of peripheral injury suggests they were not victims of human combat or an ambush. Because the injuries were exclusively located on the tops of the heads and shoulders, researchers began looking for a source of trauma that originated from directly above the group. Forensics matched the skull fractures to heavy falling ice. The travelers were caught in a violent hailstorm involving solid chunks the size of cricket balls. Navigating an exposed, high-altitude ridge, they had zero natural cover. There were no caves or tree lines to shelter them as the heavy ice rained down. The storm left the entire group dead on the ridge. The cold, high-altitude environment then acted as a permanent freezer, preserving the evidence of their final moments for over a millennium. Forensic science successfully identified the victims and the nature of the storm that killed them, but it has not yet uncovered the motive. We still have no clear explanation for what drove a group of Mediterranean travelers to leave their warm coastal climates and march thousands of miles into a lethal, freezing wasteland. Historians can only guess if this was a secretive diplomatic mission, a search for a lost trade route, or a religious pilgrimage that recruited travelers as it moved through the region. Every year, as the summer temperatures briefly rise, the ice at Roopkund melts, and every year, more bones push their way to the surface. Science can explain how the hail crushed them and where they came from, but the Earth refuses to reveal why they were there in the first place.